We have lots to discuss in today's video, including some NHL trade talk around a handful of teams, including the Edmonton Oilers, the Calgary Flames, and multiple players with the Boston Bruins. Plus, we have a fairly significant update on the extension between the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid. We have an idea based on what sources are saying around what kind of timeline we're looking at, as well as what kind of term and how much money we're talking about. Plus, we have an interview with Brad Marchand with some interesting quotes. And we also have another article I want to take a look at regarding the New York Rangers and who should be their next captain and should it be for the upcoming year. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a fair bit to discuss here in today's video. As you can see, I'm back home, not my normal recording studio, but this is kind of like what I call like a Studio B, if you will, just to kind of change things up. I like to record downstairs in the kitchen here just to kind of give a different type of scenery once in a while and change things up so you're not looking at the same static background all the time. But vacation's over, I'm back home. And here we are. Lots of fun was had in Nova Scotia. Now I'm back at home here in New Brunswick. It appears as though we have another NHL retirement on our hands, although this has not been officially announced by the NHLPA or the player himself, but based on an Instagram post from his wife, it sure appears as though Mike Hoffman is retiring from the NHL. Now, Hoffman did not play in the NHL last year, so this is not probably shocking news to anybody who follows the game closely, but her post did say that, you know, basically congratulating him on a great career. So Hoffman's going to be, I think he's already 35, going to be 36 soon. He's appeared in 745 games total in the NHL, 228 goals, 487 points. He was originally drafted by the Senators, went through their system for an extended time, finally earning an opportunity to be a regular, everyday NHL player. Had a number of seasons of 25 plus goals. Was a huge part of their run to the 2017 conference final, where they had lost in Game 7 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Ended up having a couple productive years with the Florida Panthers after that. Bounced around with a few other teams afterwards, including a stint in Montreal, San Jose, and elsewhere. And then, of course, that was it for Hoffman. I know there was a point where he was kind of jokingly referred to as a Sharks legend because he was traded to the Sharks by the Ottawa Senators and never played a game. He was ultimately flipped over to the Florida Panthers in a separate deal shortly thereafter, played a couple productive years in Florida. Like I said, it was his most productive years by far was Ottawa and Florida. He had some decent years after that with some of the other teams he played for, like I said, between Montreal and San Jose, etc. But those were by far the time that he was the absolute top of his game for sure. Unfortunately, when he left Ottawa, it was one of those unusual circumstances where there was a lot of reports that he and Erik Karlsson could not be on the same team in the same locker room because of issues that were going on between their spouses. And I know that's probably going to be what Ottawa fans unfortunately might remember the most about Hoffman is how things kind of ended there. But he had, regardless of all that, I don't know the full truth of what went on and what didn't. We know there's a lot of it was speculation, but he did have some productive years and scored some huge goals. And actually, Karlsson and Hoffman hooked up on one of the most memorable Ottawa goals in their history and during the playoff run when Erik Karlsson did that long saucer pass basically from his goal line all the way up into the others, across multiple zones, landed on Hoffman's tape against the Bruins, and where he had a breakaway and did the Forsberg move to score an incredible goal. It was one of the nicest passes you've ever seen, the nicest finish to go along with it. But if this is it for Hoffman, certainly, like I said, had a decent career, and certainly lots to be proud of for his on-ice performance. We have a number of other things to take a look at here today, including an interview with former Bruins captain and new Stanley Cup champion with the Florida Panthers, Brad Marchand. Of course, he's had an incredible summer. We've watched all the clips of all the parties and all the celebrations. Now he's down to business training and looking at things from a different perspective now. But after an incredible run with Florida, of course, he ended up signing a 6-year extension. Now, we knew there was a chance that he could stay in Florida. We knew there would be mutual interest to do so, but the contract surprised a ton of people. And this interview kind of solidifies the fact that he says he has every intention of playing that contract out and fulfilling all of the obligations that come with it, basically saying that as you get older, you kind of realize how close you are to the end, and you don't want it to end. Basically, you want to play as long as you're certainly capable of. And he says he plans to play until he can't play no more, that they're going to have to kick him out of the league. Basically, at some point, and really, they're not going to do that. It's just an expression, of course. But ultimately, when that contract expires, he'd be 43 years of age. You generally don't see many players play past the age of 40, maybe 41. It will be quite a feat if he makes it there and actually plays every season that's signed for as of the current time. But I mean, he had, like I said, an incredible run with the Panthers. He did say as well that the re-signings of Sam Bennett and Aaron Ekblad played a huge role in his decision to remain with the Florida Panthers. We do know he had opportunities elsewhere if he wanted them, and certainly I think after how everything played out in Florida, I think he wanted to try to make things work there first before really looking elsewhere. But it was well known that there was at least a few other teams that would have paid him the exact same amount of money that he ended up getting with Florida, maybe even on a shorter term too. So, ultimately winning and staying put in a situation he was quite happy in, was ultimately the most part of that. It was most important to him. But obviously, like we know, Marchand is a player that's been having a lot of fun, still been productive at an older age, which is great to see. And if he has his way, like I said, he'll be playing until you have to kick him out. So nice to see such. We shouldn't be surprised here, but he loves the game so much, extremely dedicated to it, and will not be going away any time soon. Now, of course, we get a pretty significant update today as well from a source that I would refer to as a pretty reliable source on the Connor McDavid contract extension situation with the Edmonton Oilers, and that's a 2 months podcast. And I must say, they have had good intel in the past. For anybody who may not be familiar with them, they may not be a huge name, but I followed them for a while now. They had a lot of good intel on the Draisaitl extension last summer, and a few other things as well. So to me, when it comes to getting Oilers info, they are reliable in my opinion, and I've seen enough good stuff come out of their reports that I trust that they are going off good information here. But essentially with McDavid, they're saying now that the belief is that the timeline that we're looking at is probably an announcement, hopefully, if all goes well and goes to plan here, after the Team Canada Olympic Orientation Camp, which is taking place August 26th to 28th in Calgary, Alberta. So after that, sometime, because shortly after that would be when they're going to be starting what they call the captain skates, where, of course, captains lead the NHL early skates before training camp officially begins. That's usually right around, the 1st of September, right? So, before those begin and training camp is underway, they want to get this extension hammered out. So Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman are hard at work this month trying to make sure that this gets finalized and that everything is, across the finish line here. But the belief is definitely not going to be an 8-year term. They're saying that there's pretty much no chance of an 8-year, that it's expected to be a 2 or a 4. So, 2 years wouldn't be very long. That would be, I don't think, Oilers fans are going to accept any extension and be somewhat happy about it, but when you want your superstar players locked up for 8 years, even there would be some probably unhappy with 4, but getting 2 only would be risky. But you know what? At the end of the day, Connor McDavid is the best player in the league. He's going to command and get whatever he wants. Edmonton can talk to him all they want about committing longer. If that's all he wants to do, that's all he's going to do. Now, the belief is as well that the AAV on his contract is obviously the term will play a role here, but it's going to probably be a minimum of $16 million. It could be upwards of more than 17 and a half, actually. Obviously, the term will play a factor here, but it's going to be huge money in short term. McDavid obviously will probably do this, I suspect, to kind of keep the pressure on Edmonton to make sure they have every opportunity to win the Stanley Cup each and every year. Make sure that they don't kind of take him for granted after getting locked in on a long-term basis, that he has opportunity that way to be flexible and sense of a team around him. And also, you know what? He is the best player in the game, and it's only right that he try to maximize his earnings. And from a maximizing earnings standpoint, shorter terms for these top players do make sense. There's always, you want the job security, if you will, because there's always that chance of an injury or something that you don't want to see. But for some guys, it's not the end of the world, especially when you've already made a ton of money, which obviously McDavid at this point has. So expect a short-term contract for Connor McDavid, 2 to 4 years, 16 to 17 million range, sometime after the Team Canada Olympic orientation camp, which is probably going to be like at the very end of August or the very early part of September, and before training camp gets underway, so that it won't be a distraction for that, and they can go in and just focus on trying to get back to the Stanley Cup for the third consecutive season. So we'll see where things go. Now, another update from the New York Rangers. This one on an article in the New York Post from Larry Brooks, indicating that he feels that the Rangers really don't have a good excuse to not name a new captain for the upcoming 25-26 season. Obviously, since they've traded Jacob Trouba, they have been captainless, which a lot of teams go through when they move their captain. They don't often rush to name a replacement anymore. Back, 20 years ago, 15, 20, 25 years ago, that was a pretty commonplace. The teams felt like they had to have a captain, and as soon as the captain was either, they left, they either retired, free agency, trade, it was almost instantly that you would see a new captain be named. But that's no longer the current practice by many NHL franchises. Usually they like to take their time and make sure that they select the right player. Obviously, it's quite an honor to have that letter on your jersey and to represent the team in that capacity, and they want to make sure they get it right. Now, Brooks' article kind of suggests that he feels that JT Miller should probably be the most considered player and that he should be the next Rangers captain. Obviously we know JT Miller comes with a lot of passion. He comes with a lot of hard work. And certainly, before the trade happened with the Canucks, once there was an inkling that he was available, you heard a lot about the Rangers being the team to watch, that obviously he had history with them. We know he's great friends with Vinny Trocheck. There was a lot of connections of him to that area and going to the Rangers. Like, it just seemed to be a good fit, makes sense. There's history, like I said. And, could he now be the next captain? I definitely think Miller should be considered for sure. As far as who should be that guy, he hasn't been with the team super long. Not that that's everything. It's not. But I do wonder about Vinny Trocheck. Before Miller was there, Trocheck probably would have been my pick. I know some people think Adam Fox should be. I don't know. I mean, I don't have any issues with Fox. I'm just not sure that he's, from what I've seen watching. Of course, I don't know about the the insides of the dressing room and all that. I'm not in there, but I don't know. I would think that from what we see, that Fox might be better as an alternate captain. I think Vinny Trocheck should be heavily considered as well, but it wouldn't be surprising if either Miller or Trocheck were the next Rangers captain. But let me know who you think should be that selected person, and should the Rangers make that choice before the 25-26 NHL season. Now, some other rumors around the NHL. Let's look at some trade talk here. Start with the Edmonton Oilers. Bob Stauffer, of course, well-connected Edmonton Oilers reporter on his podcast, was referring to a nugget of information, if you will, suggesting that he feels sometime here in the next few weeks before training camp gets underway that the Edmonton Oilers are very likely to make a cost-cutting trade, and that he can see them shedding a contract to give them more flexibility going into the season. Now, he doesn't necessarily think that newfound flexibility will be used immediately. I guess they can take their time and find the right player, but he does feel that the most likely player that could be moved to free up space would be Matthias Janmark, that he will end up being a cap casualty here, if you will, and that they will then use that space to then scour the market and to look for a top 9 forward, somebody with a little bit more size, grit, skill, like a combination of that, which is not the easiest to find, but definitely size for sure. They definitely want to get a little bit bigger on the wings. So, I don't know how quickly they do that. The next question is, do they maybe hang on to Janmark until they kind of zero in on this player and determine who that's going to be? But yeah, he does feel that type of trade is coming for Edmonton. but didn't have a name to give on who he thought they may target. We know we've heard a lot about goaltending with Edmonton, but it's not by any means not the only thing that they're working on here. Of course, as I mentioned, we have the McDavid extension. There's goaltending, and another forward. Looking at the decor, there's a lot of things that could happen here with Edmonton. Now, of course, their provincial rival in the Calgary Flames. We know we've heard a lot this summer about Rasmus Andersson, but he's yet to be moved. And Rasmus Andersson made some interesting comments to a Swedish news outlet called Expressen. We've seen him interview other NHL players in Sweden. It happens at least usually a few times per summer that it probably happens more than that, to be honest, but unless they make kind of comments or quotes that are really interesting, it doesn't always get mainstream attention. But Rasmus Andersson was basically saying how there was a lot of speculation that he kind of made it tough on the Calgary Flames to trade him by saying that he would only entertain signing a contract with one team. And he says that's not true, that he basically did not pigeonhole the Flames into only dealing with one team because that's where he would do an extension with. There was a lot of speculation that team was Vegas. According to Rasmus, he says that's not the case, that he's not spoken to the Calgary Flames about really any teams that he would consider going to and signing with. But he understands, of course, that there's a chance to be traded here because of his contract and and how everything works on the business side. It sounds to me like Andersson has, accepted the idea that he's probably getting moved, but has not narrowed things down to one specific team. Obviously, so we had heard about Vegas. He also says that he had heard, he knows there was an offer from the LA Kings. Now, he doesn't really clarify about blocking that or not, but obviously didn't get excited to sign an extension there. It's interesting too because we've seen a lot of players block deals to LA in the last couple of years. Makes me wonder why. What is going on there that it seems to be having a tougher time for players, for the team to get players there. I'm not sure why. It's just an interesting concept. But yeah, Andersson obviously says he's aware of an LA offer. Obviously didn't take it. But he also says that the concept of him only going to one team that he would waive for or sign with is not the case. But, by the sounds of things, he is definitely going to be dealt. Just a matter of when and where. And we just don't know the exact timing, but it could take place during the season. At this point, it sounds like Craig Conroy and the Flames are quite content to let Andersson play things out, and they're not, at this point at least, concerned about things being a distraction for the club. Now, as I mentioned, a bunch of players in the Bruins are still getting heavily talked about in the rumor mill. According to RG.org's Jimmy Murphy, his latest article talks about some Bruins trade rumors, suggesting that there's as many as 3 players that are getting a lot of action, a lot of play in the rumor mill, that he feels that there could be a good chance for some Bruins moves here ahead of the 25-26 season as well. The 2 names that he mentions the most, says that he's hearing out there quite a bit, is goaltender Joonas Korpisalo, of course, who's, an interesting player for sure. And then, of course, there's also centerman Pavel Zacha. Now, Zacha and Korpisalo have been mentioned earlier in the offseason. The other name that he mentions that he feels is a good chance could get traded is centerman Casey Mittelstadt. Now, Mittelstadt, he says that when they acquired him from the Avalanche in the Charlie Coyle trade, that he was never really their main target. But they were real happy and quite high on getting Will Zellers, who they really, wanted included in that trade. So I think they took Mittelstadt in order to get Zellers, and the expectation by many apparently was that he probably would be flipped by the Bruins to another team. That's yet to happen. Didn't have the greatest run after the trade, so maybe that hurt his value a little bit. He's kind of been an up and down centerman in the last number of years here between Buffalo and then, of course, Colorado and Boston. But yeah, there is a good possibility, according to this article, that Mittelstadt could be flipped yet again, and that he's certainly named to watch. Now, if they are having a difficult time landing a trade, he says it's possible to go into the year, kind of see what they have and how things go, if he can maybe up his value a bit. but his name is very much out there. And like I said, Zacha's name is very much out there as well. Same with Korpisalo. Murphy did reach out to each of the agents for both players when it comes to Zacha and Korpisalo. Both agents really basically said that their players are, if they've heard the rumors, and that nobody's requested a trade. But, we had also heard Korpisalo wasn't the most thrilled either with how the season went and that a trade might be welcome. I don't think he asked for it. It's just one of those scenarios where you think from what you've heard that, he would be totally okay with it, but he's not going to go demanding it either. One of those types of scenarios. But the Bruins and Don Sweeney appear to not really be done dealing, and these three names are still very much out there. When you see some trade activity start to pick up again, wouldn't be surprising to see them be a team that's busy. Zacha was a player that had previously been linked to Vancouver. Korpisalo had been linked to a few teams, but I don't know that the interest was super high. And as far as Middlesex goes, we don't have any specific teams yet, either that the Bruins had talked to about him, just that they were seriously considering flipping him to find another centerman they may think that fits their identity and their lineup a little bit better. But either way, some interesting names that are out there for sure. Lots to talk about today. Like I said, it's great to be back home as well here on Sunday night. So you'll get your regular slate of videos with normal recording studio here for the remainder moving forward. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news. We'll discuss that down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.